This
Turning on the camera
conference will
now. We've
now
had
be
like
recorded.
terrible technical. Look at this. Look at this. We've had some technical difficulties.
It's been
So
rough.
I'm trying to see because some people were saying that did you just join?
I just joined and I
Okay.
just downloaded the GoTo thing.
I love you for that.
You're the best.
You're so good. Yeah, like for some reason people were saying that they um couldn't
Get in.
get in. Oh,
I
but there's
But
Mel.
now,
Okay, now we
okay.
have other people. Let me see if I can get in on my phone because there was 3 on the last. Yeah, y'all okay, y'all start.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. I'm so sorry about that. I mean, if you're just joining, I'm glad you're here now. But we were having some technical difficulties. Nothing like living in the digital world now where you're waiting on technology to like let you into meetings and be able to run. So sorry that we're getting started just a tad bit late this morning or this evening. My hours are all running together at this point. I'm just really glad I got my kids on the school bus today. Yay, this makes me really happy. So, without further ado, hi, I'm Jessica with Harmony Harvest. It is such a pleasure to be here. Oh, there's Steph joined in, so now I know that it's letting people in. This is good. Steph is my sister. She's going to be sitting as my moderator today and helping. And we're so excited to do our first ever flower therapy. This is a brand new wild beast, so we will see how this goes. This was an idea that I had kind of coming off of 2024, which was a train wreck of a year for us. We had probably one of the hardest years of our entire lives to date last year, and it was hitting from all angles and from all people. And you'll probably hear more about all of that in flower therapy. But it really it did a lot of good in the wake of the year. It really kind of showed us where we needed to lean into. And I found my most peace and my most healing calmness, I think, in the chaos of 2024, in my gardens and with the connections that I made there. And it carried me. It carried me so much to be able to get through some of those real life fires. And it was the flowers and the people that did that for me. And so making it through and kind of looking forward, I wanted to see if there was a way that I could almost provide that for others. If I could find a way of making us have a real safe place where we could kind of get through the pressures of life with a happy distraction of something that we're all passionate and enjoy. And so from that, the brainchild of flower therapy came to be. And I kind of bounced it to the crowd. And the crowd's really smart. In fact, some of them are here. We're going to test this. We're going to do this for 3 months. It's totally free. We're going to see what everybody thinks about it and how this goes. And so the goal will be to meet once a month and to have some real, honest, communal conversation about what we're experiencing in our gardens, in our lives, kind of how we are coming up and through all of that. I, if you know me, never like to say I am an expert except for at chrysanthemums. I'm totally going to toot my own horn there. But I like to say that I can share a lot of what I've been through. So I've been flower farming for over 10 years now. I'm pretty seasoned in my growing teeth. And I live at the farm that I run with my mom and my sister. So it is a full-fledged family business that I created. And I live there with my husband, and we're coming up on 20 years of marriage, one of my biggest achievements to date. And we live there with my 4 beautiful children, my best crops to date. And the kids range in age from 15 to 9. I have twin boys in there. So my life has thrown me a lot of dynamic and unique kind of attributes that I have given me a lot of season to share. And so as I have been growing the business, as I have been growing the family, I wanted to give a place that we could all kind of come together and talk through what's happening in our gardens, what we're experiencing, and how we hope to kind of achieve our goals, so to speak, in life. And so that is flower therapy. And that's what I hope we get to do every single time we come to visit, because therapy has been really important for me. And so I thought a way for all of us to sit down and kind of talk through the good and the bad would be a fun place. And so I assume, and this is usually my first problem, but I assume that most of us are sitting somewhere that it is like deathly cold, or it has been, because that's, yeah, Jonalyn, I know you're on here and you're coming from Florida, like first snows.
10 snow.
How much did you end up getting?
We ended up getting 10 inches, and it's not all gone.
Oh my word. 10 inches of snow. So we didn't even get that much here in Virginia. We actually ended up with a much bigger snow right before, and it was one of those really heavy, wet, sopping snows, which are the least favorite for a flower farmer. So if you have any structures, if you have row cover and hoops, anything like that, that heavy, thick snow, the real wet, fun stuff to make great snowmen and snowballs, it crushes structures. And I have, before I was a flower farmer, I worked in greenhouse distribution where I would design and help people with greenhouses. And I hated going to work the day after a big snowstorm because I knew I was going to be dealing with a lot of collapsed structures. And so it is a big job if you have a structure to keep the snow weight off of it. And I didn't think about that when I put 7 high tunnels up. And our high tunnels are a good 12, 15 feet up in the air at peak. So they're not short, nice, easy to reach little houses either. And the first few years that I put those houses up, I would get extendable poles for mops and brooms, and I would take a nice clean, it had to be a clean broom because the dirty brooms would scratch or tear your plastic. But we take a nice push broom that was brand new, and I would beat on the inside of the greenhouse plastic. And when you're covered in Carhartts and layered up in thermal, oh my gosh, you start sweating fast and you think you're going to have a heart attack about halfway through a house. And I was looking down at having 4 houses and I was like, well, this is not fun. And so a few years back, we actually, you see those patio heaters that are real tall. And since our house is so tall, we got 2 heaters for every house that we had. So we have 4 houses. We have a total of 8 of those heaters. And they just take a simple propane tank that you would use for your gas grill. And we would put one at the top, or probably about a fourth of a way from the top of the house, and then a fourth of the way up the bottom. And we turn those on when the snow first starts. And it literally would keep it warm enough from the snow accumulating. Now, one of the things I also love to tell people when they were picking greenhouses or telling me they were going to bend their own pipe and make their own, I would always recommend to really watch the angle of your peak, because if you have a really good peak angle, you can have a structure that will naturally shed its snow. So when it gets a little bit, an inch or two kind of accumulates on there, it'll actually just slough off. And that makes it so much easier because it doesn't remove the work. Most people are like, oh, great, so you don't have to remove snow. No, see, then it falls off the house and it builds up on the sides. And the next thing that can happen is the pressure from that can kind of pinch the house and it'll buckle the sides. So not only can you squash it from the top, but you can pinch the sides in if you don't remove the snow from the sides. So you have to still kind of go down the side of the house and pull the snow back so that you don't have that build-up pressure on your frame. And we've gotten really good at being able to use a snowblower, a quick shovel just to kind of zip down. And that doesn't have to be nearly as perfect as making sure it's not on the structure itself. And I have gotten pretty good now at being able to know when it gets heavy, at what point to turn on the heaters. When I first started with the heaters, if there was a snowstorm coming, I was turning them on, and I would waste that first hour or two of propane and be kind of mad at myself. But it was always worth it. Now that I kind of know my structures a little bit better, we wait for it to pick up. So this last snowstorm that came, I didn't even have to turn the heaters on. The peak of the house shed enough snow that we didn't even have to bother with it, which was great. Now, I hate snow, and I don't hate many things, but the snow actually does a lot of good. Even though it makes me really cold and whiny, it does some really great things like providing insulation for those plants. So outside, I was talking about how we have to get snow off of our structures. Well, out in the fields, all of the plants, it's actually a blessing to have that snowfall, because it's going to protect them from the Arctic temps that usually come along with the snowstorm. So it acts just like a big, thick winter blanket, really protects them, as well as adds a real light layer of fertilization kind of to the landscape in general. You see, when snow falls from the atmosphere, the snowflakes will attach to loose particles of nitrogen, and then when they fall, they bring that down to the earth where the plants can take it up. And so while it's not a tremendous amount of nitrogen, it is what is responsible for kind of that quick green up that we see at warming up after the winter months, when we have snowfall. So as much as I'm complaining about it and I hate the snow, it is providing some extra insulation in the fields. It's providing a little bit of extra fertilization across the board to everything. And it's also doing its job at killing off all of the bugs. So that's the other thing I have to remind myself. I hate these temperatures. I hate the snow. I'm just so bitter about it. Isn't that terrible? January is a hard month. But when we are getting these nice cold stretches like this, it does help with the insect population. And in our high tunnels and in our structures, things that we try to keep an extra little bit warmer, you're going to find bug pressure tends to be an ongoing thing. And so being able to have Mother Nature just give us a quick zap and take out a lot of those lasting bugs, the like iron will ones that refuse to die, will be such a blessing come spring. I think we're going to probably see that we have less insect pressure coming off of these really strong, cold, sustained temps that we've had, and the Arctic plunge that's gone so far south. So fingers crossed, this does mean that we'll have less insect diseases, or insects and pest spread diseases to deal with come spring, which makes me really happy. You're also going to see, if you are joining us, my sister Stephanie, the moderator, did just put up a message. If anyone has any pertinent questions during the course of flower therapy, feel free to throw them in the chat. She's going to help us to go through any questions, anything across the board, from growing to business to raising the family while we do all of this. Especially right now, since we're all sitting in January and it's like spinning my wheels. It's January. What do I do? There's actually a lot of gardening that can happen in January. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to have to open up a seltzer water.
I have a question.
Oh no, my sister already has a question.
I want to know how Jocelyn's crops are doing since it's so darn cold. She's under snow and she's in Florida. What did that do?
Jonalyn, we have to know how your crops are doing. Like, how is things in Florida?
Do you want me to ugly cry?
Oh, is it bad?
I lost my shade structure. We did not lose the hoop house. It was rain. It was snowing so hard and so fast that we couldn't keep up with it, getting the snow off. And so we cleared as high as we could reach, because, ours are built to withstand the heat and the winds,
Yeah.
not the snow. And I have some of the ribs that on top that started bulging a little bit, but we didn't lose any of it. But all of my row covers, I couldn't get them. I was so concerned about the hoop house, and I've seen all the horror stories about hoop houses falling down. So I didn't get to my low tunnels that were covering everything in the field, and they've all collapsed. And tomorrow it's finally melted enough that tomorrow I was trying to take it off, but it was just ripping the agribon. So tomorrow I go in and yeah, tomorrow we'll see what it is. And on top of everything else, because for the last 4 nights we have had to have starting at about 6 o'clock in the evening until about 7 o'clock in the morning. We've had to have our propane heaters running, and we just have like blowers. They're not like real heaters because we don't usually have to have this. Um,
Right.
so we, so I've been getting up every 2 hours to go check them because we've had the power flicker a little bit. And when the power flickers, it turns the blowers off and they have to be turned back on again. So every night, every 2 hours, I takes me like 10 minutes to get all the layers on because I also don't have the right clothes to be out in this kind of weather.
Right.
And then I go down there, check everything, and if I have to change out the tanks. And last night I was so tired I went to bed and I did not set my alarm clock. And so from about 11 o'clock, no, about, yeah, until so about midnight till about 7 o'clock, it was between 29 and 32 degrees in there. And so we have a lot of cold damage on the stuff in the hoop house, and that's everything. There's tens of thousands of plants in there waiting to go out in the field. And we're just waiting because we knew a couple weeks, like 3 weeks before this, that this was coming. So I'm just gonna wait and see. But the day before the snow came, I seeded 20 trays because I didn't know what would survive and what wouldn't. And I have about 100 more that we'll seed in the next week, and we'll just do that because I don't know what else to do. I already cried about it.
Oh, Jonathan, if you need to cry again, I think you should because that is the weight of the world on a flower farmer's shoulders.
Mm.
That's a lot.
It's been a difficult. So tonight is the last night that we have really cold temperatures. And then after that, we're back up into like the upper 60s and the 40s and
Hmm.
50s. So, hopefully my tulips will do really well. And hopefully all our dahlias that we had been, uh, propagating are all brown. And
All of that work.
I know, and I know that this is like it's like first world problems, but the other thing is I'm like all the money that I paid for employees to do all that work, and I'm just like, and so
It,
we're not doing market. We haven't done any markets this month, and so there's been no income this month. Luckily, I booked 3 weddings, so there's that, but you know what I'm
it's
saying.
always biting on the fingernails of trying to figure out what if you're making the right call at the right time. And
Yes.
it's really hard when Mother Nature does not work with you. I mean, you have all of my sympathy and everyone here for sure, because that is just when it comes out of left field. And I think we're all going to have to learn how to be really adaptive and creative as we start seeing more and more volatile swings in our weather patterns. And what does that mean? Does that mean our southern growers are going to have to be prepared for random snowstorms? And does that mean that Virginia and my area needs to be prepared for more prolonged droughts? These
Yeah,
extremes are becoming harder to work with.
we were coming off we were in a drought from June through November as well. So it's like piled this year when you were talking about how this year has been a really hard year. I'm like, oh my God. Yes, yes, it has been. Yes, it has been. And so I I we went to Washington State to visit my youngest son and his fiance and meet her family, so we wouldn't just be meeting them at the wedding.
Hmm.
While I was there, I tried really hard to talk Clay into letting me quitting because I'm just like I'm really tired. I have lost my joy, and this has been like the hardest, not just for the farm, but personally as well, the hardest year probably I've had in a really long time. And he said, no, I wasn't allowed to quit, and that I would regret it if I did. And he would kick my ass if I did. So I did not quit. But like you're doing flower therapy, I started a thing on my farm page about I was just very blunt with everybody. I was like, somewhere along the way I lost my joy. And so I'm going to spend this year rediscovering it, and I'd love to have you join me on this joy journey, and let's find the joy.
I would love to, of course. Absolutely count me in. I'm on the joy like road trip for
Mhm.
sure. I think a lot of us can kind of hit that burnout or joyed out stage kind of in the rigmaroles of gardening and farming. It's just, it can be a lot when it feels like every stack keeps falling on top of you. But there is also still such beauty, and I think that's what keeps pulling us back, is that we know that there's always hope and promise in that next seed that we plant, that could be the life-changing flower, that could be the bloom that sets everything else apart and starts a whole new trajectory. So you're right, Jonalyn, we're not quitters, and that's why we're here, is we're not quitters. But
We
as
just
much
want to be
as
sometimes.
I know. Listen, there are things that we have to pivot away from. That's what we'll say. We make the honest choice to pivot away from them, but we are not quitters.
No.
Um, Talking about like snow in Florida, we've also seen these raging wildfires out in California, and we
Hmm.
can't forget about all of the flood victims in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Like the area has just, our country as a whole has had some extreme weather patterns present themselves, and we all, I think, need to think a little bit about how we can proactively work around that, whether that's in our families and our setups, or whether that is in our gardens. I mean, we had pipes freeze, and my kids got to learn about sub-zero temperatures that way. That was not a life lesson that they wanted or I wanted. Um, but seeing the reports of these negative temperatures that are sustaining, and it's like, well, what will that do to the ecology as well? Like, are we going to see new natives kind of take dominance in areas just because of the weather patterns changing?
Mm.
That always intrigues me.
That's a really, that's, I didn't even think about that, but that's really, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that if with all of us evolving to be able to compete, that the plants are going to do the same. And so if these extremes mean that maybe some of the things we've become accustomed to seeing in our roadside ditches are no longer able to survive, but then something else takes its place, what are our landscapes going to look like after that? And that's just a background version versus the change of topography from these big hurricanes, these big storms, these big fires, and the devastation that kind of tears through. And there's a lot that I think gets overlooked that we can do at home, and that we kind of should do to protect ourselves. One of the things you were talking about, losing your shade structure, I hate hearing that. Last year, we had a house that we lost the plastic off of it, but by the grace of God, did not lose the metal structure. We had a tear in the plastic, and the wind got a hold of it and yanked it the whole way back. And so I had a 90-foot piece of plastic whipping straight up in the sky. It was terrifying. And then right after that, we had a snowstorm come, and it snowed in the house, and it had to sit that way for a while before we could get it fixed. And let me tell you, like, losing structures like that when you have crops in them, when you're depending on them, we ended up with no ranunculus last year. It was a
Oh,
real punch to the gut. And so my ranunculus crop looks good this year. Yay.
cute.
I'm very excited about that. The temperatures are making things wake up slower. So I'm in there talking with my chrysanthemum stock every single day. I'm like, I have the lights on for you ladies. Turn the heat up a little bit more. what else do you need from me? We gotta start waking up, and they're like, can you get rid of the 2 degrees outside? So
Ask you a chrysanthemum question.
yeah, go for it.
So our chrysanthemums are perennials for us here.
Yep.
And our mother plants that we have in the hoop house. But then usually all of our everything comes back, like probably 75 to 80% of it comes back every year.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think they were not covered? They were not anything because I had to make choices and I knew I could propagate more. But do you think the ones in the field will come back, or do you think they're donezo?
No, I think your mums are going to be fine. Like, I think that's one thing you can actually take off the worry list. Um, if you need a win, let's call them the win. We didn't, like I said, didn't get the snow, but what we did get was an ungodly amount of ice. And ice, I feel like, can be more damaging than snow alone. Now, as I go out there and do my best detective science work, and I am not trained as either, it looked like there was a little bit of the powdery snow on the very bottom before the cakey wet stuff, then the ice cap on top. And if I could kind of pull off that crust, the plants seemed to be okay. But if they were in areas where it was just straight ice, not as okay. The ice will typically either kill due to rot, or it'll set the plant back quite considerably for the next year. So if you're just seeing a lot of snow out there, and wet snow is okay, but that like thick layer of ice is usually the bigger issue with the plants.
We just had 10 inches of snow, and as it melted, there's a little bit of it was like a little bit crunchy, but it wasn't
Yeah,
really ice. It wasn't icy. Just
I think you'll be fine.
so.
And look at it this way, it just watered everything for you.
And I have heard that snow also brings a lot of nutrients that your soil needs to the soil as well, like nitrogen and stuff like that.
Yep. So the snowflakes, when they fall from the sky, actually attach to nitrogen that's loose in the atmosphere. They bring it down to the soil, and then when the snow melts, it leaches into the ground, making it easy and readily uptaken by the plants. And so that is a real big benefit. They call it the poor man's fertilizer. It is a way that kind of Mother Nature helps to feed herself is by snowing. And then the blanket of protection, that is Steph back there, moderator, making sure we're plugged in. I hope we're
Hi,
plugged
Steph.
in.
You are no, you're gonna be, but I'm gonna move you.
Okay, it's going to get a little jumpy for just a minute. We're learning how to do this better. This was round 1.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to like physically move that. Yeah, like you're gonna have to pick up your just.
Oh, I
scooch.
gotta move.
Yeah, sorry, y'all.
Oh, I gotta like hold the computer on my lap.
Sure.
Okay, hi.
We're right.
We'll do it this way.
Wait.
No, give me that stool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we come to Steph's house to do these because the internet's better than at our rural farm. But then we run into some other snafus, so just bear with. Look,
We're back.
we're
We're good.
perfect. We're perfect. Yeah. So one of the other things that I do when I'm evaluating the snow, so like if it's just starting to come down, kind of watching to see if I need to turn on those heaters. When it really starts coming down is when I start getting a little panicky, because it's that quick buildup that is the biggest problem. And when we would have structures get crushed, usually it was in a heavy downpour of snow. And a lot of people don't think about it, but you do have one last resource. It's not great, but if you have snow coming down and you are starting to really worry about your structure crushing, you can slice your plastic. Not fun, like I said, because greenhouse plastic is not cheap to replace. You can slice your plastic and let the snow come inside. It alleviates all of that pressure on the outside of the structure. And you can just say you watered in the middle of the winter in your greenhouse until it gets covered again. So that is one extra thing that you can do if you're worried about losing a structure due to snow load. But right now we're really fighting the ice. We have about an inch of ice kind of across the board in different places. And I'm worried about my field crops that are covered in the ice. We had all of our caterpillar tunnels made it through our first snow round, but then like this last section that had a good bit of ice with it, there's a few sections that popped down. There's one section that the fabric got completely pulled off, and so I know those plants got iced, and it is not a place on the farm I want to go and hang out because there's a lot of work over there that I watched kind of disappear, and that is not fun, right, Jonathan?
You're
Yeah.
100% correct.
Yeah, dealing with the winter blues and doldrums, and this is one of the reasons that I kind of got into flower farming when I was in high school. I was really, really feeling the winter blues. And the doctors are like, oh my gosh, she is so seasonally affected. Like, get this kid some vitamin D. And I was trying to figure out, like, what could I do to feel better? And it was a high school horticulture class where our high school had just gotten a greenhouse, and it was winter time, and I got to be the first class of kids that helped plant petunias in that greenhouse. And it was like magic to me how much better I felt being out in it. And I still to this day find that I don't do well in the winter. You've already heard me whine and get crotchety. But I don't do well in the dark winter months. I really crave living, growing things in community. And so being able to be in the greenhouse really helped me to offset that and has continued to be a real help for me. And so a lot of times, even if it's not necessarily warranted, if I can just put some earbuds in and go for a walk out in my greenhouses, even when it's bone cold, I just feel better. Even if I'm not looking at the best of stuff, I feel better. I think there's something just about connecting with the nature and about the land and being able to see, knowing that we are planting hope, knowing that we have something new going in the ground to start us again. And so that always helps. Plus, this time of year is when I love to do all of our planning. And we have been very busy with planning. We do office hours, which has been so much fun. But they're filled with strategic planning. And even if you're just working in your home yard, or if you have a flower farm, this is prime opportunity to get plans laid out. Look at the crop plans, make sure that you have a good schedule laid out. We go through and inventory all of our tools. We do sharpening and cleaning of our tools, and we make sure all of our workspaces are cleaned up. It's been a lot of just the background maintenance that kind of gets overlooked in the season, and the throes of things becomes really important this time of year. And so one of the other things that we've been doing, and I would love any of y'all's advice on what you do for this situation. So our high tunnels, one of the biggest issues that we have is we'll have air gaps that come right under the little knee wall, little sideboard that runs at the base of them. We'll get little daylight areas, and it doesn't matter how much soil we add in there, they always seem to open back up. And our houses are on a bit of an incline. They're probably the steepest houses in the state of Virginia. It's okay. We're going to forget that part. But we have these areas that daylight. And so right now we've been going through with either clean bed straw or soil and trying to just block out all of those places. We have tried so many different things over the years, from overturned sod to cardboard to insulation board. I mean, we have done it all, but it seems like we always end up with some daylighting, especially after we get a house completely prepped and cleaned right up to the edges. So if anybody has really good tips for that, I would be game for those. But right now, like I said, what we've been doing is taking clean straw and just making sure that those areas are packed super tight. What we worry about a lot in Virginia are spring winds. And we get some really strong winds, and there's nothing that sets my anxiety on fire quite like the spring winds do, because I can't see that weather. There's very few weather reports that cover wind, and wind can do a good bit of damage to structures, greenhouses, and even our crops. You know, a lot of the damage that comes to the cut flowers that we grow comes from wind. In the winter, the wind is what will kill those little baby seedlings that we're trying to protect under the row cover. The row cover is there to prevent the wind shear damage more than anything else. And so the winter winds can rip through and really hurt things. And then the spring winds can come and they can quickly tear down a crop that you've worked really hard to get nice and tall and straight. And so we have to do a lot of preventative work on kind of maintenance around the farm to protect from wind damage. In fact, one of our houses, house 2, has its entire left side is exposed to the winds. And I didn't realize how bad that area was until we put in our parking lot. And so it's almost given the wind an area to ramp up until it hits the side of that house. Last year, we had a few of the hoops of that house actually walk out of the ground, which was terrifying because I am not a mechanic like that. And so we ended up being able to get everything fixed and reset and positioned. But I'm already thinking about those spring winds and what I'm going to do to kind of combat them, I guess. And so my plan, we have a lot of old pallets. They're not old, they look nice, but we have a lot of pallets from shipping. And so we're going to build a pallet wall just as a wind barrier, windbreak, to try to slow down kind of the roll of the wind into the side of that house. But we're going to have to make it look cute because it's right up against the parking lot. And I don't know that a lot of people are going to find it cute to pull up to a house. So that's a project that we're kind of working on developing out and figuring out. One of the other things that I'm working on right now, and I'm a little over my skis, but this is how we learn new things, right? We're putting insect screening on all of our chrysanthemum houses. And so maybe you're familiar with shade netting, which a lot of us growers, when we're growing in tunnels and structures, they get way too hot in the summer months. And so we put up a shade netting, and that really helps drop down the temperature by a good 10 degrees in our springs and in our falls, and makes it like the perfect climate. Where I am, we remove those in the winter because ice will attach to that and it will shred your plastic. So we pull it off for the winter. Now, an insect screening, very similar, being that it goes over top of the structure, but it actually encloses every inch of that structure. So it'll go from the ground across the house to the ground. There will be a screened opening where the door is. It goes over top of all heaters, ventilations, and fans. And what it does is it prevents even some of the most tiniest of insects from getting into the house. And it can also help with some of the larger insect spread diseases. And so for us wanting to maintain clean culture stock for our chrysanthemums, we're now looking at what that looks like. And I haven't even gotten the quote yet, so I don't know how much that costs to want to do it. But that's something that we're working on. And I'm looking at covering the 2 houses that we use to kind of hold over our mother stock, our main production house, and then FedEx, which is our heated greenhouse that we grow in. So I'm pretending like that stuff's real cheap because I want to cover 4 houses in it. Probably not the case, but you know what? It's 2025 and it's not 2024, and I'm going to pretend it's really, really cheap. So I'll hopefully be able to share more about the insect screening, what the cost looks like with that and with the putting it up. I'm getting a couple of different quotes on it because I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know if this is just a standardized thing or if this is something that there's wheeling and I don't know. So I asked for a few different price options. And I went to some of the bigger suppliers. This is usually something that's carried by a greenhouse construction company or a major supplier like a BFG. A Griffin is who I chose to speak with. And then one of my local suppliers, Valley Produce Supply, just to see what that kind of entails. And I know that my equipment has to be screened, but I'm not exactly sure if it just loosely hangs over it or if there's fastening. So I'm learning a whole new thing about insect screening to protect our crops. And hopefully, we will be also taking the main Mother Mom production house and heating that this coming year as well. So I've been working on different plans on how we're going to execute that, how we're going to shift our growing when there's construction in different zones and in different houses, and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. We've already started all of this year's crop. And so we no longer sow our own seeds. We work with another grower to start all of our seed crops. I took them all of our seeds Christmas week, which was really cool. They have a ton of kids. It was really cute seeing the whole family up there. All the kids were playing outside at Christmas. I took them all of our seeds and the dates that we wanted for pickup and have been talking with them. Everything's growing along great. So we have a little bit before we have baby plants coming back to the farm. Now we'll still sow a few things and we'll do some summer sowing. All of our direct sowing we take care of. And then I guess we have poppies that went in December. So we've been babying our poppies, ranunculus, anemone, watching all of those crops. We have some Orlea and bells in a house that I don't know. We'll see how much they didn't mind some of these really low temps we just had. They were really big. They were pretty mature. In fact, I was kind of hoping I would have Valentine's Day stems, and I'm not. I hope I have spring ones now. It's a gamble when we do this. I look at that and it makes me want to cry, but I go next door and the ranunculus look amazing, and I didn't even have them last year because we killed a whole crop load. So that feels like kind of the wins and misses that come along with this time of year. It's always a little bit more fun, I think, in January with the dreaming side. You haven't really put the plan in place. You're just creating the plan. So it's really fun to kind of get in there and roll your sleeves up and think about all the cool and fun things you want to do. I've been planning out different workshops and things that we'll be doing on the farm this year. So it's literally been planning across the board. I've been combing over seed catalogs and looking at some of the new releases of plants. I don't know if you guys are a plant geek like me, but there is a new petunia on the market that glows in the dark. Now, I heard tell that a 4-inch quart pot costs about $70 to get one. For an annual, that might be a little pricey, but I am excited. I want to see that. Supposedly they worked with lightning bugs to be able to correct the genetics in the petunias, and so the foliage is like vibrant, glow in the dark green. I'm not kidding you guys. It's glow in the dark plants. The foliage glows and the blooms will glow as well. I think it might be a little while before we see this hit the market big time, but they've been slowly leaking out sample plants. And so all kinds of crazy cool things. Mandy, what do you have to say about that? Oh, she went away. Okay. I thought you got excited. I was excited too. Yeah, so we just came back from the Mance Trade Show in Baltimore, Maryland, and we were doing that with the chrysanthemums, getting those in front of a whole bunch. Oh, Steph, you should totally get me a $70 plant for Christmas.
Wow.
We were at the Mance, which is the Mid-Atlantic Nursery and Trade Show, focusing on the chrysanthemums and selling those into the wholesale market. And that's kind of when I got to see this BioEssence new petunia that hit the market. And that is a really amazing, it's a overwhelming show. There's over 1,000 booths there. I was booth 2,000. We were in the corner. It was great. They put us by the free cookies, and the free mini donuts. It was fun times. But that trade show was so great because I got to walk the floor and talk with a bunch of different industry businesses about things that really mattered to what I was working on. I had a couple of different we mealy bugs have been a problem for us for the past few years. I feel like I've got a handle on them, although I have PTSD. And so I was able to go talk to a couple of different chemical lines and manufacturers to see what are my options. Am I doing the best kind of mode of attack? And it was really reassuring. Also, I got a ton of free literature, which, if you're a plant geek like me, is just bedtime reading goodies. But to come back and really look at, and we saw some of the really impressive and innovative new things that are coming out in the industry. There was this grow a hedge company that ships, they look like window boxes, but they're the beginnings of a shrub hedge. And they had all different versions, and it was amazing. It was just a really incredible show for us to be able to attend. And like I said, glow in the dark petunias. Who knew that would be the next big thing? We're going to be making midnight bouquets in the gardens, is what I'm thinking is going to happen. Okay, you guys, this has been a really fun kind of chat session with all of you tonight. I had a great time. I hope that you guys found some time. Oh, we have a question here. Mel, any tips on starting a cut flower garden for personal use? What to plant? Okay, yes. If you're going to start your own cut flower garden at home, there's a couple of things that I would highly recommend. Zinnias, celosia, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm going to say you should get 1 or 2 dahlias and start the love affair with those right now. They are a little bit different of a growing rhythm, but if someone is really interested in growing and starting a cut flower farm, I think it's kind of important that you see all the different ways that plants those flowers begin their life. And so if you're going to seed grow, I start with easy things. Definitely your zinnias, gomphrena, your celosia. Then you can kind of move on to the things that make you work a little harder for them. That's going to be your rudbeckias, your scabiosas. You may also want to look at some perennials. If this is something that you're like, no, I love to garden, and even if I will always love to garden, so then invest in long-term plants. When we start looking at perennials, the Amsonia. And if you've been around me, you know, my gosh, she talks about it all the time. I absolutely love Amsonia. It is a powdery blue flower in the spring. It lines up with Mother's Day and it lasts. It's a beautiful little shrub that gives beautiful fall color in the foliage. Just a really solid workhorse in the gardens. One thing I fell in love with this year, and my designer would kill me, but is just common sage. Sage became such a workhorse for us, and it is one of the things that still looks good. So I can go visit it right now in January and not like feel like everything on the farm is dead. I do. I really enjoy the sage. We also are bringing back hopefully Salvia lacantha this year, which is a really, really great. I know, right, Jonalyn? The sage, it's good stuff. Salvia lacantha is a fall blooming purple flower. Also dries beautifully. That's one that I highly recommend. When you start looking at shrubs, if you have the room to do it, I invest in those before I invest in anything else if you're seriously committed, because they take the longest to grow. And the first one you're going to plant is limelight hydrangea. She just throws so many stems, and it's kind of a guaranteed August flower for you. Another one that dries really well. You can also look at lilacs. Lilacs are really having a moment, and there's really nothing quite like that fragrance. Very quick season to them. So don't go overboard with the lilacs. Throw peonies in. If you want the lilacs and you want to overindulge, get 1 or 2 lilacs, get a bunch of peonies. You're going to have to wait to harvest them, but the wait is worth it because your plants will be loaded down after those first 3 years with incredible blooms for the rest of your life, probably even longer. What else?
Are you serious?
What? chrysanthemums?
Duh.
Well,
I
yeah.
didn't say it.
Okay. Well, Steph says I have to go back and talk about my beloved chrysanthemums. So it's one of the easiest things that you can put in the ground, kind of forget about it, and know that you're going to have amazing fall color. They are just really dependable. Right after the end of dahlia season kicks off, the chrysanthemums light up. And there's really just nothing quite like having those late season focals. You hear me say this a lot. There are few focals, so we have to grow as many of them as we can, and you lean into them. You're really looking at your right now it's tulips and ranunculus, and you're going to go into your dahlias and your zinnias, your sunflowers, and then you have your beautiful chrysanthemums. You notice I didn't even say roses because we don't need to. We can let Ecuador have the roses. There are beautiful garden roses out there, and I'm not going to lie, I may have a couple of them hidden around my farm. But there's a lot of other flowers that we can kind of use to fill in the void of just thinking of that as the only focal flower. And chrysanthemums kind of round out the season for us.
Okay, last question of the night.
What?
Lisa says, okay, she's never had aphids, but they hitchhiked onto one of her potted mums that she brought inside to overwinter.
Yep.
Is there a trap crop to use indoors in the home to catch every last one before she starts seeds for the season?
I wish, girl. Mm-mm. When we're working in the house, I'm sticking with my neem oil, my horticultural oil. I'm using very, very diluted rates of that. And I'm pretty judicious about trying to keep those clean and then kicking them out. I don't know if you saw, I even put up in stories this past week. I had a houseplant that had a little infestation, and the consensus was to toss it. So that's what we're doing. We're throwing it out. Just make sure you do a really good job of disinfecting your area. Put up in advance of starting your seedlings. Go ahead and get some of those yellow sticky trap cards and hang those up for about a week before and start checking them every day. See what kind of population you might have lurking around. I also would just put a sterile potting soil tray or a tray with potting soil in it with your sticky card. That gives them like, oh, let's go and check that. There's nothing there for them to mess with, but you'll be able to get a good idea of what type of population you're working with. Okay, did we hit all the questions, Steph?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. Okay, this is, huh?
We'll be back.
We will be back. We're going to come back next month and do this again. This is really fun. In the meantime, I want you guys to think about what growing questions or things I could help you with and bring them to the next meeting. Feel free to send those in to us. We're going to be coming with a list of all of the questions that we've been getting and kind of go over them and work through them together here, making some friends. Next time, Mandy, you can come on and talk to me. I promise I won't bite. Thank you guys so much. It's really great hanging out with you during the month of January. I look forward to seeing you next month, and I wish you nothing but a garden filled with happiness and joy. We'll talk soon.
You know how to stop it?
No.